Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Lindblom, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. In this episode, I want to talk about 6 ways to strengthen your relationship with your horse. And if you're here listening to this podcast, then chances are that you are quite interested in having a very good relationship with your horse and that you want him to feel as good as possible in the time that you spend together. So we're going to talk about first, what does a good relationship look like? Then we're going to talk about what can break down the relationship. We're going to talk about 6 ways to strengthen the relationship, both inside and outside the training space. And then to finish up, we're going to talk about 3 ways to avoid breaking down the relationship when you have to do something aversive to them, like worming them, or there's a veterinary procedure or something like that, and it's just not going to be a very nice experience for them. There's a lot packed into this episode, and I really hope that you find it useful. Now, first off, it's really important to know what a good relationship with your horse looks like, because sometimes in some situations, and especially if you haven't experienced a good relationship with your horse already, it can kind of be like as if it's normal for horses to not want to be caught, for example, or that it's normal for horses to not want to be around people, or that it's normal for horses to just do particular things, when really that's just a result of the way that they're handled and the environment that they're in. But I remember when I was learning to be around horses, I didn't really know that it was possible to have a strong relationship with a horse. I thought horses were just they just did their thing, and it was normal for them to not want to be caught sometimes, and it was normal for them to want to pin their ears sometimes, and you just had to kind of show them who was boss, and if you showed them who was boss, then they would start to trust you more, and all these kinds of things. It's just important for us to be on the same page of what we're looking for when it comes to a good relationship with a horse. The number one key marker with a good relationship with your horse is that your horse actually wants to spend time with you. Okay, he seeks you out. He follows you around. He's like a little magnet when you're around. He keeps an eye on you and he's drawn towards you because he knows that you provide him with positive associations. So that is kind of the number one telltale sign whether or not you have a good relationship with your horse. It is definitely not normal for horses to not want to be caught, or that you have to hide your halter behind your back when you are approaching them in the paddock, right? That is a sign that they have negative associations, either with people or with training or with whatever happens to them once they get caught. You really want to keep an eye on how much your horse willingly chooses to be around you and how much he seeks you out. You may see him approaching you when you go into the paddock. He might nicker to you or call out to you when you appear. Those are all really, really good signs that your horse has nice and positive associations with you. The second way to know is if he stays nice and calm and still feels safe even when he becomes unsure, whether that's in the training or outside the training. If something makes him a little bit unsure about something, but he still feels safe and calm around you, that's a very, very good sign. I've met many horses that as soon as they become unsure, particularly if they don't know the answer that I'm looking for, they start to become really unsure and all they want to do is get away from me, because in the past they have been punished or pressured when they didn't know what the answer was. So the human then obviously thought that the horse was not doing the thing because the horse didn't want to do the thing, or the horse was being naughty or something like that, and then escalated the pressure to make the horse do that thing. But in reality, the horse just didn't really know what the answer was. That way, he then associates not knowing the answer with escalating pressure and stress and scary things happening. So if your horse becomes unsure, If he still feels safe and calm around you, that is a really, really good sign that he trusts you and that he feels like you're not going to pressure him into something that he's not quite sure how to deal with. That's a really, really good sign as well. Then we can go deeper into this in that when your horse becomes unsure and scared or frightened about something, generally what their instincts are going to do is tell them, go towards another horse, go towards the herd, seek safety in the herd. That's like over evolution. That's just what they've been programmed to do when they get frightened. When their nervous system goes into the sympathetic state, which is fight or flight, their brain is just going to tell them, find another horse, find the herd. If your horse in that moment starts to look to you instead, that is such a good sign that you have a really good relationship with your horse. That is not going to happen with all horses. Some horses, given their past experiences, particularly during the breaking in process, if that was really harsh, sometimes there's nothing that you can do. Whenever they get frightened, they are still going to seek the herd because they have a history of knowing that people are not safe for one reason or another. It's not like if your horse doesn't do that, that you have a bad relationship or anything like that. You can still have a very good relationship. But in some cases, when you have that situation where your horse becomes frightened or spooked and he seeks you, that is such a good sign. The next thing is that when he stays with you, even when he knows that he can run away, if you were to take your horse into a big space, if you were to take him into an unfamiliar area and he chooses to stay with you, maybe you're taking him for a walk or something like that and you can let him off lead and he just stays with you, that's also a really good sign that he seeks you. I'm not encouraging you to do that because of course that can become dangerous if you're letting your horse off leash like willy-nilly. Please don't do that because your horse could run away. But if you are able to do that, then that's a very good sign that you have a very good relationship with your horse and your horse sees you as a point of safety and a point of good experiences. But those are the main ways that your horse will tell you how he feels about your interactions together. So make sure that you listen to him. And if it's not quite what you want to hear, don't worry, because there's ways that you can strengthen your relationship, which we're going to talk about soon. But now I want to go into some of the ways that will break down your relationship with your horse. And this is basically anything that makes your horse feel bad and he associates those bad feelings with you. This can be anything that is painful, stressful, scary, or hard work for your horse, and you are involved in that feeling. If every time you bring your horse out of the paddock or every time you interact with your horse, you are working him really hard. Maybe you're tacking him up with a saddle that doesn't fit or a bridle that is uncomfortable for him. Maybe the bit is very painful for him. And when you bring him out of the paddock, then you take him away from his friends and he has separation anxiety, so he finds that really scary. And then when you bring him into the riding arena, then it's really hard work for him. Maybe that's stressful as well. That is all going to affect your relationship with your horse. You want to try to assess how your horse experiences your interactions together. Sometimes negative experiences for your horse are unavoidable. Like what if it's an emergency? What if he needs a veterinary procedure? It's hard to make that a very happy and pleasant experience for your horse. At the end, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we can approach those types of situations. But now let's go into 6 ways that you can use to strengthen your relationship with your horse. And this is basically the opposite to what we were just talking about with breaking your relationship down. Because breaking your relationship down is you being associated with negative experiences. Building your relationship up is about you being associated with positive experiences. So I've broken these 6 ways down into 3 that are outside the training space and 3 that are inside the training space. So let's begin with outside the training space. The first thing to understand is that social connection in mammals, whether it's you or your horse, your dog or your cat or a lion, social connection does not become an accessible state unless the mammal feels safe. The nervous system needs to be in a state of safety in order to want to be in a state of social connection. If the nervous system is not in a safe state, then it's going to be busy trying to survive. The first thing to make sure is that your horse feels really safe. And in order to do that, you need to make sure that he has all of his needs met. You need to make sure that he has his forage, his friends, his freedom. He feels healthy. He's free of pain. He's free of distress. There's nothing in his world that is causing him to be in a constant state of survival. That's a very unhealthy state to be in. And it's also a state where social connection does not become particularly important. Of course, as herd animals, when they don't feel safe, they are going to be really drawn to the herd. And I've heard of trainers that literally deprive horses of what they need and even friends and food. And then they go in and they're like the horse's only source of survival in order to connect with the horse and in order for the horse to want to be with them. But of course, that's extremely unethical. And we don't want to be creating a relationship through depriving the horse of anything that they need, right? That's animal abuse, and it's not what we should be doing. That is just not how we want to go about this. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your horse has everything that he needs. He has a really good life and he is happy and healthy in himself. And then you're going to come in and add more positive experiences to his life. That's the very, very first thing. Provision of his needs and ensuring that he is in a state of safety so that he is open to social connection. The second one is connecting with yourself before you connect with your horse. And this is incredibly important because I talked about in one of the previous episodes how humans, we are thinking creatures. We spend a lot of time up in our heads, whereas horses, they're very feeling creatures. They spend a lot of time in their bodies and they let their nervous system and their emotions and their senses guide them as to how to behave and how to react to different things. And as humans, we have this mammalian part of us that feels. And the thing is that our emotions and our nervous system is actually a very intelligent system. The only problem is that our brain is very busy overpowering that system. And our brain thinks it's really intelligent, but our body and our emotions have a different type of intelligence. As humans, we have both this ability to feel and the ability to think and use abstract thought. That is what really sets us apart, us humans apart from other mammals. It's our neocortical development and our ability to think about the past and plan for the future and reason and create and all these different things that really is the reason why the world looks the way it does today because of human creation, right? We have the ability to think, but we can't forget about this mammalian ability in us that can really feel, right? I really encourage you to take the time to connect with this part of you because many people have learned to suppress their emotions, to just overpower them, or almost become numb and shut down for different reasons in their past. But the more that you can get in touch with your emotions and the more that you can use this in training, the more deep your relationship with your horse will become and the more incredible your training because of the way that you're able to communicate with your horse will become. And it sounds a little bit woo, but I've started to get a lot more deep into this myself, and it's just incredible what it can do. I really encourage you to start meditating. There is a lot of content on the internet about how to meditate and different ways that you can sit in your emotions and different ways you can kind of get to know yourself that is in a way that is beyond the chatter that is in your head. Okay, so I encourage you to first meditate on yourself and then go out into the pasture and meditate still on yourself, but around your horse. And it's incredible how the horses actually respond to this. And you have to go out there with no expectations. If you go out and meditate with your horses and you're expecting them to have some kind of profound reaction, then it's not really going to work because you're not going to be in a meditative state. You have to be out there and you have to meditate and just focus on yourself. You can meditate on your horse. This is getting into a different topic, but you can meditate with your horse in that you're just aware of your horse and you're just watching them in a very unjudgmental kind of way. But we're not going to spend too much time in this realm of things, but I really encourage you to explore this aspect. Number 3 is a little bit similar to meditation, but it is spending undemanding time with your horse. Horses are different from other companion animals that we have in our world. Our cats and our dogs, even our rabbits and rats and hamsters. Horses are pretty much the only animal that we expect the things that we do of them. We usually want to do something with them, and we want them to do something for us. We want them to work for us. We want them to perform for us. We want them to behave in a very specific way. And we often don't spend a whole lot of time just being with them with absolutely no expectations, or just being with them for them to feel good. A lot of the time, it's just about us. It's about what we want and what we want to do and our schedule and our goals and our aims. We have to learn to put that aside sometimes and just go and hang out, just scratch on them, or take them out and just go for a little walk and let them graze and let them explore if they're comfortable with that. Just spending time where you're not expecting anything from them. When was the last time you expected your cat to run circles around you or to do different gait transitions? It's kind of funny to think about. What about your dog? Maybe you do expect things of your dog. Maybe you do trick training and agility or who knows what with your dog. But generally, for the dog, it's kind of a game, right? The dog really, really enjoys it. For horses, we expect a lot from them that they don't really enjoy. That's why the common way of working with horses involves whips and bits and spurs to make the horse do what we want them to do. I really encourage you to think about that and compare it to how you spend time with your dog and cat. Of course, horses, they can't live in our house with us. They can't curl up on the couch next to us or sleep in our bed, okay? But that just means that you need to schedule for when you go out to the barn or when you go out to the paddock, or if you're lucky enough to live on the same property as your horses, that you put some time aside just to go out there and connect with them. It's important that you have connection time when you go out just to connect with your horses, and you have training time when you go out to actually do things and train. And what you decide to do with your horse, whether that's a particular discipline or whatever it is that you decide to do in the training time, that's up to you. But if you choose for the training time to be a very positive experience for your horse as well as your undemanding time, then your relationship is going to go ahead in leaps and bounds. If the training time is quite a negative experience for your horse, then that could work against the relationship that you're trying to develop. Those are the 3 things that you can do outside of training. 1, making sure your horse feels safe and has everything that he needs. 2, connecting with yourself, such as through meditation. And 3, spending undemanding time with your horse. Now, let's go into some of the ways that you can improve your relationship within the training. Number 1 is refining your knowledge and understanding of how your horse thinks, learns, and experiences the world. This is an umbrella concept for everything that you do with your horse, whether it's liberty training, show jumping, dressage, cutting, or just picking up your horse's feet, okay? The more you understand how your horse thinks, learns, and experiences the world, the better your horsemanship is going to become, which means the better you're going to be able to communicate with your horse, the more attuned you will be to your horse, and the better your training will become in general for your horse in terms of their experience of the training. You're going to be able to provide your horse with more positive experiences within the training if your knowledge of how they experience it is really, really good. Because the more time that you can spend in your session saying yes to your horse and praising your horse and telling your horse that they're the most amazing horse in the entire world and being happy with your horse, the more positively your horse is, of course, going to experience the session. It's much nicer to have a session where your human is happy and praising you, as opposed to when your human is just frustrated and pressuring you to do different things. Of course, the more that you can say yes to your horse within the training, the better. And this all comes down to setting your horse up for success. It's not your horse's job to figure out what it is that you want them to do. It is your job to set up the training session, to set up the environment, and to set up everything in a way where it is almost impossible for your horse to get it wrong. And this is such an important concept to understand. And the amazing thing about liberty is that it forces you to do this. It forces you to be better. It forces you to be a better horse person, because when your horse is allowed to say no, when your horse is able to say no, when your horse knows that he does have the option to say no, then you have to figure out how you can get a true yes. Remember that this type of liberty is not based on obedience. It is based on freedom and autonomy, and for your horse to actually give you a true yes when he does have the option to say no. Liberty is not about making the wrong thing hard and the right thing easy. It is about making sure that your horse knows that he can be anywhere else, but over with you in the training session is an even better place to be. That is what liberty is about. And in order to do that, you do need a very good understanding of how your horse thinks, learns, and how they experience the world. So that's the first one when it comes to within the training space. The second one is clarity. And I suppose this follows on a little bit from the first one, because the more understanding that you have, the more clear you're going to be able to be in your training. But when it comes to the way that you communicate with your horse, you want to be as clear as possible, but as gentle as possible. I like to do as little as possible with my body, but as precisely as possible. Often there's a lot of noise. If you don't have a lot of self-awareness and you are everywhere all of the time with your body, if you have a lot of movements in your body all the time, if you have a lot of things going on with your body and you're all over the place, then there's a lot of noise. So what you want to work on is moving less and more precisely. This comes down to a lot of self-awareness, a lot of body awareness. And when you are asking a question of your horse, you are very aware of the way that you are asking that question. You have an intention behind the question. You have a mental image of what it is that you are asking your horse to do. And you are moving your body in a very precise way in order to ask that question. And it's absolutely incredible how perceptive horses truly are to our body language and to our energy and to our intention behind our body language. And often we don't give them the opportunity to respond to us on that level. We jump straight to the big movements because we want to be really clear. Clarity is not the same thing as being really big in your body language and doing like a really big movement in order to give the cue. Clarity is precision and consistency. You do not need to be loud. You do not need to be big. You need to be precise and consistent. So we had number 4 is refining your knowledge and understanding. Number 5 is clarity within the session. Number 6 is relationship before performance. This one speaks for itself. Sometimes when we have goals and we have things that we want to achieve and we are focusing on different exercises and different movements that we're teaching the horse to do, sometimes the relationship can start to take a back seat because we get so focused on what we want to achieve with the horse. But when you start putting the relationship as the number one priority in everything that you do, the performance will come, okay? You don't have to worry too much. And if it is something that you keep running into issues with, then maybe it's time to adjust your goal or what it is that you're doing or how you are trying to achieve that goal. If you start putting the performance before the relationship, it's going to be really, really tricky for you to form a good relationship with your horse because your horse is not going to feel seen, he's not going to feel heard, and he's not going to feel attuned to in general. And attunement is the biggest thing that is going to grow your relationship within the training as well as outside the training. Just attunement to his needs and how he feels and how he's experiencing everything. If you can start to listen to him, that when maybe you have a goal, you're working towards something and you can sense that your horse is becoming uncomfortable or experiencing it negatively, there is no problem with saying, hey, sorry, I pushed that a little bit too far, and then just back off and do something else for a little bit or go back a few steps. Try to put your horse's experience of what you are doing in the absolute forefront of everything, because then your horse will know that he can trust you. He can trust you not to push him past that point where he becomes too uncomfortable. Sometimes a little bit of discomfort is where you can grow, but there's a limit to that. Always try to put your relationship before your performance, in front of your goals for your horse's performance. So that was the last thing that you can do within the training space. We've gone through 6 different points here. Outside the training space, we have provision for your horse's needs. We have meditation, connecting with yourself, and we have spending undemanding time with your horse. Within the training space, you can work on refining your knowledge of how your horse thinks, learns, and experiences the world. You can work on your clarity within the session, especially with the way that you're communicating different questions to your horse. And then number 6 is always putting the relationship before the performance. Now, I want to finish this episode off with a very important topic on top of this. And that is, what about those situations where you need to do something to your horse or with your horse that is going to be a negative experience no matter what? Maybe you have to travel your horse. It's hard to make traveling a very fun and positive experience for a horse. Maybe your horse needs a medical procedure. Maybe your horse needs to get wormed, okay? I mean, there's a lot of things that your horse may need to do in his life that are just not going to be a very positive experience for him, and it's almost impossible to make it a positive experience. How can you get around these types of situations? The very first thing is that you can think of your relationship as a bank account. Okay, you want to put a lot of time into building your relationship. And then when you get to these points that are going to be a little bit negative or a little bit aversive to your horse, you have enough money in that bank account to withdraw. You're not going to completely lose the relationship. It may go down a little bit. Your horse might be like, ooh, I didn't really like what you did to me then. But you still have a really good foundation because you have worked so hard on depositing money into this relationship bank account that if you have to withdraw a little bit, it's okay. It's fine. It's not going to be like the end of the world. It, of course, depends a little bit on what it is, but generally, if you build enough trust with your horse, then you can do these little things and they're not going to take as much of a hit to the relationship as they would if you hadn't spent any time on the relationship and then suddenly you have to go and do this big negative thing towards your horse. The next thing is context-based procedures. So you can have a very context-based to when you are doing the things that are potentially seen as a negative experience towards your horse versus the stuff that aren't. A very common example is that people want to start liberty with their horse, but they don't want to stop riding their horse. And the horse kind of sees the riding stuff as work. Okay, it's not necessarily something that they would choose to do, but the person understandably doesn't want to put all of their activities that they do with their horse completely on hold in order to start liberty. And that's absolutely fine. A lot of horses are perfectly fine doing a lot of the other disciplines. But for the most part, those are all operating under negative reinforcement in order to cause the horse to perform in those particular ways. So you can have context-based activities. You can have in this context is when we are working, and in this context is when we are playing. And having that differentiation in the context can help you be able to keep the relationship strong. And it can just be the normal thing. And a lot of horses, they just get used to the way that life is. And if you have, okay, in this context it's work, in this context it's not, then it can be a lot easier to continue doing things that are potentially not as positively experienced by the horse, but not break down the relationship. Like it's still kind of the normal way of being. And the last point for this is preparation. Okay, you want to prepare your horses for emergencies. Please, 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 please prepare your horse for emergencies. If your horse does not load onto the trailer, please make that a priority. Okay, make it a priority to train, hire a horse float or borrow a friend's horse float if you don't have one. Hitch the horse float out. Just make sure that your horse is comfortable getting onto a trailer because tomorrow he could get colic and he may need to go into the hospital for treatment. And if your horse does not load onto the trailer and he completely refuses, then it's just... You need to have your horse prepared for emergencies. What if there's a fire? It could be anything. I really, really encourage you to prepare your horse for emergencies. If your horse is able to load onto a trailer, if he's able to have all of his legs touched, if your horse is really bad with having his back legs touched, what will happen when he gets a fence injury, for example, and he needs a bandage change every second day? You need to prepare your horse for these types of events so that your horse can stay safe and so that the experience when it has to be done is not more negative than it needs to be. When I was working as a veterinarian, I saw horses like almost on a daily basis that were just not prepared for veterinary procedures. A horse had a foot abscess, for example, which is fairly straightforward to manage and to treat, but not if you can't touch the hind legs. If your horse is trying to kick you every time you touch the hind legs, I can't treat that abscess. And what if there's a wound? Like it's just unnecessary for the horses. And these people might have had their horses for 5-7 years. There was enough time to work on this problem, but because it had never been worked on, then it's a much more dangerous situation for myself, for the owner, and also a much more negative experience for the horse. If the horse had just learned to have its hind legs handled, then it wouldn't need to be as scary of a situation for the horse. So those are the 3 things that I have for you in terms of dealing with those negative situations that kind of have to be done. See your relationship as a bank account so that you have enough money in there to withdraw when you have to do something that's going to be experienced negatively by your horse. Have context-based activities if it's something that you want to continue doing that your horse may not necessarily find enjoyable. Have very differentiating times when you do particular activities. And preparation. Try to prepare your horse as much as possible for those negative experiences. Worming. Worming is another example. You can worm your horse with applesauce or molasses or something that's really yummy every second week. And the moment that you're going to use a real wormer, then it's going to be a bit of a surprise, not a very nice surprise for your horse. It's oh, I was expecting something delicious, but you're not going to have this massive anticipation by your horse when he sees the wormer and he goes, oh no, it's worming time again. And then he gets kind of anxious. And if it's difficult to worm and you have to go through this big kerfuffle in order to worm your horse and the horse is really stressed out by it all, versus, oh, he just had an unhappy surprise with the worming paste that day and he goes, oh, that was really disgusting. But the next day he's just oh, it's probably going to be applesauce. It's often applesauce. It's probably not going to be wormer again. Things like that. This has been quite a long episode and I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got a lot of value from it. If you love this type of mindset around horses and horse training and you want to learn more, I have a free masterclass available on my website that takes you through the principles behind the training, the framework, and also how to begin Liberty with your horse at home. If you want to dive really deep, the Essence of Liberty Online Academy is open for enrollments, and you can find all the details about that on our website, and there's also a link to that in the show notes as well. If you're loving this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you share it with your friends, with your family, on your Instagram story. You can tag me in it as well, because if you love it, then chances are that someone in your circle will love it as well, and they can probably use it to help their horse and to help other horses in their circle. The only way that this podcast grows is from listeners like yourself sharing it, and I really, really appreciate it if you do. And make sure that you subscribe as well on whatever platform that you're listening to this on so that you don't miss another episode. And I will see you in another episode really, really soon. Bye for now.